Hey, what's up? So, did you know that all of my cars, okay, well, not all of them, most of my cars have names? I have been naming my cars ever since I got my first Fox body. I know a lot of people name their cars, and in a way, I know it's kind of silly, but cars are supposed to be fun, and naming your car and being silly is all part about it. And even more so for me, cars are not just an extension of my being, but they're almost like their own beings to me. They're like a friend. And to me, cars are more than a machine. They have their personalities. They have, you know, their strengths and weaknesses, just like a person does. And they're all different in their own way. Even if they all look the same, I assure you there is something different about each and every car on the road. So for the longest time now, I've named my cars because they are like my friends. I deal with a lot of mental health problems, and these cars have not only helped me therapeutically, they were there for me like a friend many times and helped me out of a lot of bad times in my life. So every one of my cars has their own name. And in this video, that's what I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. Every car I've had since the Fox body, the first one, and I'm gonna tell you the name of each and every car and how they got the name. So this is gonna be a fun little video. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the first car that ever got a name. Even though I had the Taurus, the green 93 Taurus, that was my first car, I didn't get into naming cars until I got the 93 Fox body coupe. You know, this was my first serious car, right? Like, it was a true project. It was my daily. It was a money pit. It was a lot of things. And it never occurred to me until I got that car to ever name anything. Usually a lot of times you'll see people name their cars, you know, with a female name or something. You know, for me, that hasn't really been the case. And I'll tell you why later in the video. But because so many people name their cars with some type of female name, you know, I had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to call my Mustang. And it was like, okay, well, do I really want a female name? Not really, but what do I name it? It's the first time I've ever named anything. I didn't know what to call it. So if you're a millennial, you probably grew up watching the cartoon Very Odd Parents. And maybe if you're not a millennial, possibly you've seen it. So in the show, the character Cosmo ends up finding a nickel. And he's like, I got good news and I got bad news. He's like, the good news is I named the nickel Philip. And they're like, well, what's the bad news? The bad news is it's a girl nickel. Ha, yeah, you know, it was a funny little skit they did in the show there.
Good news and bad news.
The good news is I've named my nickel Philip.
What's the bad news?
It's a girl nickel.
My best friend, my roommate, you see her in most of my videos. At the time, that Very Odd Parents reference had came up in conversation, jokingly, as I was out working on the car. I think I was cleaning it or something. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna name it Philip. It's a boy name, but it's a girl car. Because it's a boy name, it's girl nickel. So the name stuck. It was my female car named Philip, or something like that. So that's what I called my 93 Fox body. His name was her name was Philip. But after that car, every other car was never to be named after a female, or with the intentions of being named after a female. They were all named after a male or a male-like character, if you will, to more or less be an extension of myself and my being, and to, like I said, be like if it was a part of me taken away to be a friend. So I kept the naming scheme to be around something more male-like. So moving on from the Fox body, then came the 97 Cobra, one of my favorite cars I've had. God, I miss that car every day. That car got a name that was very unique to it. It wasn't something that you would typically think of. It wasn't a normal human name. It never even got a human name. Once again, my lovely buddy, my friend, she is chock full of great ideas. You know, I told her, I said, what am I gonna name this car? I gotta name it now. I named the last one. This one needs a name too. But I don't want it to be a girl name. I want it to be a boy name. What am I gonna name it? But not be like cliche or stupid. You know, I wanted something unique to reflect me, reflect the car, and not be the, you know, quid pro quo type of naming scheme you would find for this blacked out muscle car, right? So one evening, also out doing something on the car, she comes out of the garage. She's trying to be all cute, and you know, she was like, "Oh, what are you doing to your Kobe?" I'm like, "What did you just say?" And she just like stopped and looked at me like I was like angry at her, like she said something wrong, because the way I just stopped and looked at her, and I'm like, "No, what did you just say?" And she's like, "You working on your Cobra?" I'm like, no, that's not what you said. What did you call the car?" She said, "Kobe." I said, "Kobe? You know, that's not a half bad name." And I'm like, wait a minute. You know, I'm thinking like, you know, Kobe Bryant, you know, the basketball player and all that. Wow, that actually would work. You know, instead of spelling it Kobi or whatever, it would be Coby, like Cobra, but just with a Y, it'd be Kobe. I'm like, that's it. That's the name. And so that stuck ever since. So the 97 Cobra was appropriately named Kobe. Kobe the Cobra. Yes, I know. How lovely is that, right? So that was an interesting one. And then after the Cobra came along the SHO. The SHO's name actually came pretty easily because I knew once again I had to name the car. And it kind of came naturally to me. This time it was fully my idea to name that car. You know, I'm just sitting there and my brain was probably working way too hard. I probably had steam coming out of my ears trying to figure out a name for this car one afternoon. I'm like, well, I got Kobe, I had Philip. What else can I name? Can I name it something that's going to follow this, like to play off the type of car it is? Like Taurus, Tory the Taurus? No, Tory sounds weird. I mean, I could have called it Tory, but I was like, it doesn't seem like it fits the car right. I'm like, ugh. So I'm like, God, Kobe, Toby, Shoby, Shoby? I'm like, wait a minute, SHO, show, B, Shoby, that's it. That's the name of the car. You know, after like I said it a few times, I looked at the car, I'm like, that's it. That's this car's name, Shoby. So I got my Kobe and my Shoby. So, you know, these were my two buddies. Shoby was the daily, Kobe was the attention getter, kind of like the bad boy. Shoby was the good boy. Kind of like extensions of self, you know, you're evil and you're good, they hang out on your shoulder. Well, that's where those cars. So of course that name stuck, and that was it. So at this point we have Philip, Kobe, and Shoby. So after those three, along came the second Fox body, 4-cylinder LX convertible. I already knew the name of this car before I even bought it. Like the moment I knew I was buying another Fox body, I already had a name for it. Because I missed my first Fox body so much. That car was so special to me, even though it in itself was kind of a piece of crap. You know, when you're a young guy and you're getting in the cars and you get a car like that, you know, it's a little special. You know, it's special to be able to have something like that at such a young age. So that car definitely, you know, stuck in my memory banks, and I wanted to, you know, pay homage to that car and to reflect it in the new Fox body. Of course, I had to name it after the first one, but I couldn't just be Philip. It had to be Philip Jr. But I didn't refer to the car as Philip Jr. I referred to it from its initials, PJ. And I thought that fit perfectly because, you know, it was kind of a quirky car. PJ is kind of a quirky name, and it just worked so well. So I'm like, you know, here it is, PJ, Philip Jr. And that was it. That was probably the easiest one I ever had to name. And I was pretty happy about that. So then we had Philip, Kobe, Shoby, and PJ. Oh, man. Hell of a lineup there. Fast forward even more, I unfortunately lose Kobe and PJ in the accident and the fire. But before that happened, I did get this car here, the 2020 HPP Mustang, and as usual, had to think of a name. This name for this car is also kind of quirky, but so is the car. You know, it's not like this big you know, macho V8 car. You know, it's a 4-cylinder, so it's got a different personality to it than you would otherwise expect for something like this, you know, big muscular GT or something like that, right? You know, it doesn't have that kind of aura about it. There is this kind of light side to it. It is kind of quirky in its own way, in its characteristics. So once again, my friend, we were picking up her younger sisters. I forget what the occasion was, but we were picking them up, and the one sister, it was the first time they've seen this car, and they were like, wow, you know, such a pretty blue. And they were like, what is it? You know, because, you know, they don't really know cars, and, you know, but they love the way it looked. My friend, she responded, it's a Mustang EcoBoost. And they're like, EcoBoost? And just the way her mind works, she was like, well, why don't you just call it Boosty? Playing off the EcoBoost name. I'm like, Boosty? She's like, yeah, Boosty. Maybe like Boosty Blue. I'm like, Boosty Blue? That definitely sounds like a name a kid came up with, Boosty Blue. Later that evening, I'm like, I don't know about Boosty Blue. It's a little too kid-like, not enough macho. You know, I didn't want too much macho because the cars doesn't have that vibe about it, but I didn't want it to be Boosty Blue. That didn't sound right either. You know, I'm thinking about it, I'm playing around with it, but I'm like, you know, it's kind of cool. I like the naming, the scheme of it, you know, with the bees. And later that evening, I was in the car with my friend. We had just dropped them off, and we're on their way back home. And I don't know, I think she did something, and I'm like, hey, watch it, Buster. And I'm like, wait a minute, Buster Blue. That's what I can call the car, is Buster Blue, not Boosty Blue, Buster Blue. And she's like, wait a minute, I actually don't mind that. I'm like, yeah, that kind of works, called Buster. You know, that's kind of a quirky name. It's kind of an old school nickname. I kind of like that. You know, it's kind of venturing into this new era of my YouTube channel, kind of doing this 80s throwback retro theme, and Buster is kind of like an 80s throwback nickname. Buster Blue, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call it. I'm like, wait a minute, how about Buster B instead? B for short for blue. It just rolls off the tongue better. So then, of course, that stuck, and this car became Buster B. Buster B, the EcoBoost Mustang. So now we have Philip, Kobe, Shobi, PJ, and Buster B, which leaves us with one and final car, and that is the Fiero. I bet you could never guess in a million years what the name of the Fiero is. Maybe you could. For the last and final car that I currently have, till more arrive, of course, is the Fiero. If you couldn't guess by now that the Fiero's kind of had its name as soon as I bought it as well. You obviously see the theme of it. The whole joke behind the car is that it was themed after the car in the movie Talladega Nights, the main character being Ricky Bobby. You already know that I couldn't name the car anything else but Ricky. And once again, quirky car like the Fiero. I think the name works perfectly. The Fiero's name is Ricky, if you were ever wondering. So that wraps up all of my cars. So let's go back through them all again one more time. So we have Philip, Kobe, Shobi, PJ, Buster, and Ricky, the stars of my YouTube channel and all my social media. I think from now on, I'm gonna start referring to these cars in my videos the same way I refer to them. And it's technically their build names. A lot of automotive YouTube channels do that. Their cars have their own kind of personas, their own character within the YouTube channel, and they all have their names. And I think I'm gonna start doing that. So from now on, we're gonna be referring to all the cars with their names, even though we don't really talk about the old ones too much unless they come up in some type of conversation or in a reference to something I'm currently doing or have done. We're mainly going to focus on this one here, Buster, and of course the Fiero, Ricky, and they're going to be the new names for the cars going forward, just to give them a proper space within my YouTube channel, give them that little bit of extra character, just to make things a little bit more interesting and fun here on the channel. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that, and hopefully you like this video. How many names you have for your cars? Let me know. Put them in the comments. Otherwise, it's going to wrap it up here for this video. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Share with everyone you know. If you want to see more content like this and haven't already, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Keep a lookout for next true car enthusiast video.